Up next, we want to tell you about an event happening today and tomorrow at McNally Robinson with one of Canada's great sculptors. This is Mackling and McGarry on 680 CJOB.
We are in the presence of a true Canadian treasure, an artist extraordinaire. She joins us a triumphant return to Winnipeg. Ruth Abernethy, sculptor who is in Winnipeg today and tomorrow to appear at McNally Robinson to talk about her book, Life and Bronze, a sculptor's journal. And this is one of those absolutely gorgeous, I would call it a coffee table book. It's got not only chock full of information and stories behind the sculptures that you've created over the years and the incredible Canadiana, but it's absolutely stunning visually. Thanks for taking some time on your visit to Winnipeg, Ruth.
Oh, my pleasure. Winnipeg's never a flyover for me.
Well, we appreciate that very much. And for those of you that might be wondering who is Ruth Abernethy and what has she done in Winnipeg, an incredible statue adores the front entrance of MTC. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about it, Ruth.
Well, this is John Hirsch, of course, and Tom Hendry, co-founders of Manitoba Theatre Centre, now Royal Manitoba Theatre Centre, where I came to volunteer at the age of 19 and then worked Rainbow Stage and then back to MTC at that point. John Hirsch I worked with in Stratford, his first, remember all the debate, the first Canadian to run the Stratford Festival. It was his first season, also mine, 81. But I came back to Winnipeg for the 50th anniversary with the portraits of Tom Hendry and John Hirsch.
So you were in Winnipeg when you were 19. What brought you to our city? Because you're from Ontario, right?
Yes.
Where are you from? Where are you from in Ontario?
Well, I grew up on a small farm and went to high school in Lindsay. So it was Summerstock Theatre was my introduction to theatre. Worked with fabulous professionals who are still working, a couple of them at the Manitoba Theatre Centre. And it was a theatre that brought me to town. Okay. They can do work off-Broadway that is remarkable, and it brings spectacular directors and technicians from everywhere. Well, and that was the bait.
We had Len Carreau in the studio just a few weeks ago, and of course he spoke glowingly and so adoringly of John Hirsch and the work of the now Royal MTC that you so aptly point out. So there are some other incredible Canadian figures that you have. Really, sculpture is immortalization, right? I'm a big sports fan. So if you've got a sculpture, if you've got a statue outside the stadium or the arena of the team that you represented, that is the pinnacle. Do we see things that way in other walks of life? That if you are displayed in bronze?
Well, it's the larger narrative that always interests me. And with legacy portraiture, that's certainly the case. And I would still contend that the living trump the dead. There are legacies, and in fairness, you should only sculpt musicians because they're less controversial than politicians. But even saying that, the living trump the dead. If we don't like the decisions that were made, it's up to us to do it differently and ensure that errors in the past are not repeated. So I suppose it's, 15 minutes of fame. As long as people are talking about how decisions went down, we have control over our own destiny in many ways.
You say that you shouldn't sculpt politicians.
No, I didn't say you shouldn't sculpt them. I'm just saying that musicians, not only can you always get a good profile photograph of a piano player, for starters, musicians don't exist in the same controversial territory that politicians do. But I can only assume that the only thing worse than all the politicians we have would be to live in a country where no one wanted the job.
Have any of your sculptures ever presented controversy that you were maybe not expecting?
Oh, yes. Yes. John A. MacDonald, of course, and I had the luxury of sculpting him twice, once as a young man, as he may have looked at the age of 19 for the town of Picton, where he made his first court appearance. Before he was yet trained as a lawyer. That's a good story. And then I got to revisit the same head study for a different committee group who are doing all of the prime ministers. By mandate, all the Canadian prime ministers at a very small town west of Kitchener will do all of them. I'm not doing them all. I'm one of a team of artists across the country who are doing, working forward on all 23 portraits. So my older statesman, John A. MacDonald, went in for July 1st, 2015. January 1st of that year being John A.'s 200th birthday.
One of the defining images of, I guess it was the second U.S.-Iraq or American invasion of Iraq was when the American soldiers dismantled that huge statue of
Yes.
Saddam Hussein.
Yes.
And of course, we've seen in New Orleans and other southern cities in the United States just in the last month or so, the dismantling and removal of Confederate figures that had been commemorated in bronze.
Yes.
So this is really almost if being immortalized in bronze is a symbol, removing such statues would be such a tremendous symbol in terms of maybe changing an era. Or
I think we're maybe looking at the cutting edge of what is at first glance a very traditional task, bronze portraiture. I think that the dialogue that goes with that as the wake on a boat is as constructive as you can imagine, prompting forward those conversations about the contributions of this individual or that individual. And I'm not sure that there's a clear answer. Everyone's contribution is unique. So how you decide to celebrate or vilify each character is both personal and collectively debatable. I mean, I love the transition even. I love the debate because to me that's where the rubber hits the road.
Ruth Abernethy is our guest. She is a sculptor and has a new book that is going to be launched tonight at McNally Robinson at 7:30. It's called Life in Bronze, a Sculptor's Journal. So you're telling us that you began in theater,
yes,
and you end up sculpting with bronze. How does that? How do you sort of hand the baton off from one to the other?
Well, it's actually less unusual than you might think. But yes, I worked very tidily in theatre for 20 years, started at age 17 and worked in most of Canada's regional theatres. 15 of my 20 years were spent at the Stratford Festival. And because you're doing classics, centuries past, and because you're working with spectacular designers who can design for the talent in the shops, lots of figurative stuff. Barbara Bryn shot out of a cannon, heads on pikes, I tried to avoid the corpse jobs, but, there's lots of figurative stuff. And I was there, of course, in the age before Amazon, right? So we were making things that you might now purchase, but they all have to be stage-worthy. So a lot of carving in styrene, that white packing stuff. I learned to carve. And the short answer is from the prop shop. In 1996, they renovated the theater. I was asked to do figures in a montage that was to indicate the fundraising success. And I learned later that the fundraising went very well, so they did have the funds to work with. At the time, honestly, I laughed when they started talking bronze from the prop shop, but they were serious. They had loved the first installation that were done very rapidly. I think I had 4 days to do each figure, which included a face. And then I repeated them, and they were installed next month, June of 97.
We have some incredible public art in our community, your installation included, but also at Portage in Maine, some outstanding Leo Mull works through
stuff.
the generosity of the Richardson family on the intersection at Portage in Maine. Why is it important that public art be a part of our landscape? And is it something that government and taxpayers should be investing in, or should it be at the behest or the responsibility of folks like the Richardsons to commission these things and to put them on display?
Oh, all of the above, all of the time. I just think that you're always balancing the long game and the short game. When I travel, if I'm not invited to the salons of the world, I'm walking the streets. I get to encounter the public art, which represents both the subjects, if we're talking portraiture, both the subject of the portrait and the people who chose to honor that individual. That's a two-part answer right there. But I have access to that. I love the democratic encounter on a street. I can stand on my head to look on that if I want to. There's not even the gallery control of stand here, look there. I love the fact that other civilizations have made their comments in bronze that we now get to find and explore and discover and discuss. But at any point in history, you could stop every public art project, and there would still be need, there would still be want, there would still be ignorance. And so you address those two sides at every step, versus public versus private. No one's off the hook. This is our shared culture, our shared history. Why should any group not make a contribution? I don't think it's solely government by any stretch. I mean, these are our communities. These are our individuals. So when private individuals can have a philanthropic role? Of course. There are some spectacular Canadians in this country who have made their presence known that way, and I have been lucky enough to work with quite a few of them. I think in Canada there isn't quite the same tradition there is in the States of public philanthropy, but I think those boomers are now going to understand that they've done their bucket list and they want to talk legacy projects.
Ruth Abernethy is our guest. She is launching a book tonight at McNally Robinson at 7:30. The book is called Life and Bronze, a Sculptor's Journal. It really is a spectacular book featuring her spectacular body of work, and we are going to try to learn as much as we can in about an 8-minute span after we have a look at your forecast. Up next, I'm Brett McGarry. He is Greg Mackling, and she is our guest. Her name is Ruth Abernethy. She is a sculptor. She has a book launch tonight at McNally Robinson at 7:30. The book is called Life and Bronze, a Sculptor's Journal. And Ruth, I understand that you are behind the world's biggest black bear. Is it
Yes.
somewhere in this book?
It's in the book. It's not something many people would claim, but I have to say there are a lot more wonderful stories in this country, and they don't all start with European traditions of heritage. I have cousins in Russell. Rossburn was on my radar, and I had noticed a curious call on the internet to sculpt the world's largest black bear, and hence we now have Duke, gift of a very generous couple in town. Walter and Adele Micasso wanted their huge black bear, and it became an interesting biological study of sourcing amazing foodstuffs for bears in Riding Mountain National Park, which is why the bears were there. There was a second bear found, but really in bronze, 800 and some pounds, about the same weight as real life, and twice the size of an ordinary black bear.
So this isn't one of these traditional Manitoba things or across
No,
Canada where,
it
we
really
claim
isn't.
it to be
The biggest
largest mosquito. Well, there would never be a
Yes.
mosquito, with all due respect. I'm trying to remember which.
Yeah, the Wawa goose,
right?
Yes.
This was actually a proportional
Yes. This is a bear
representation
portrait of Duke the bear.
who
Yes.
was the largest black
Yes.
bear ever.
In fact, they found a second bear who weighed more, but it was a difference in, because they hibernate, their weight changes.
Sure.
They still figured that Duke was the biggest.
Isn't that
but the
something?
fact that there were two prompted a biological study of the area, and
Got
they
it.
grow them large up there.
Well, I found the page here. It's page 94 in the book, and it says that at his death, Duke was the largest black bear ever, weighing 812 pounds and estimated to stand nearly 8 feet tall. And Greg, just look at this. I mean, you can see Ruth working on the bear.
You're dwarfed by
I know.
big old
It's a
Duke
wonderful
there.
shot, isn't it? While he was being cast at the Foundry, Jim confessed he could hardly get a thing done. All his buddies just stopped in for the bear report, and he
No
could hardly
doubt.
get a thing done.
How long does it take to cast a statue like that?
Well, they're all different, of course, and neither Jim nor I ever really have the luxury of doing one thing at a time. I would say for a figure for me, say 4 months. I think Duke was maybe done in a bit less, just because I had to come up with a means of working on that scale that was manageable. That's a lot of fur. And I think the casting was about the same, I would say 3 to 4 months.
Now, you mentioned something about the fact that there's a lot of math involved. Radio people, we joke all the time that we got into radio because we don't like math. And then when we get here, we realize there's
It's
a
all
ton of
about
math.
Well, and that indeed, I think a lot of professions would tell you that. But of course, I'm working with proportions, right? And mostly, virtually without exception, I'm working from photographs. So at some point, not only do both arms and both legs need to be the same length, but I'm working out proportions head to body, hand to anything. It's endless poring over photographs, and it's not really measuring because you're extrapolating, right? You're pulling out details, you're looking at different views, and really you're not looking at documentary photos, you're looking at random shots. So I just find that, you have to start somewhere, and you know that the ear is the same size in any photograph, distance between the eyes, that kind of thing. And in doing that, you're measuring it again and again, and eventually the numbers gel. And you start to generate the same number. Why? I couldn't even guess. Except there are things about a face, of course, that do repeat.
Right.
That's what is the basis of beauty: is balance.
Right. Symmetry, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
And in the oddest place, it might be width of mouth, width of brow. I'm not really sure where it appears, but it will, depending. At some point, the numbers just gel. And I think it's interesting. I mean, I have recently sculpted the Queen. What did I notice for her? Endless, 8.655555. Those
Really?
distinct to the Queen. When I was working with Oscar, astonishing. I nearly fell over when
Oscar
I realized
Peterson?
Oscar Peterson, jazz pianist, yes, jazz hero to many, working on the math and eventually the number that gels, pi.
Isn't that
3.14 with, as far as we know, no repeating decimals. I know, you start to hear the music.
You're working with pieces like, I'm just thinking of Duke the Bear. You're working with a lot of these works that you've done are quite large. Have you ever been at risk of like your safety being in danger? Because like with one, I'm just thinking of something falling on you.
Oh gosh, no. Is the short answer. No, I carve in styrene, I surface in wax, I do detailed head studies in a different material so that I can control them and better photograph them for clients. In fact, I don't do my own bronzing work. I would love to have the strength to do that, but really I don't. It's an industrial process with an art application, and it's heavy work. Just so that you know, each bronze, of course, is cast hollow, right, which is a phenomenally complex series of steps. I had done several bronze before I would have even attempted to describe it to anyone. In fact, that was the one shot in the book of me laughing with the Queen and Prince Philip. She had done a very gracious, unveil and turned to Kelly, Oscar's wife, and then their daughter. And then she turned to me and said, "How do you do such spectacular metalwork?" And I cracked up because I don't do the metalwork. And that's the photo of us having this huge chuckle, because I would never attempt to describe the casting process in 2 sentences, let alone in 30 seconds. And I did. I just cracked up. And I said, oh, well, that's the point at which you don't have to be an expert, but you do have to know one. Because in fairness, I have spectacular foundries in the East. I've worked with 3 there and several, out of province. We have spectacular technicians in this country. And it's public art. We are not saving lives with this. We are having a collective expression. And I want those people in my community. So I cast in Canada. It's not that you couldn't get a better price, I suppose, going offshore, but I think that doesn't account for all costs. And I do want those problem-solving technicians in my community. I am happy to work with them, and I get beautiful work. But in danger, no. It never occurred to me, and I don't think that foundries I work with, they have a spectacular understanding of what they're doing, and they don't put themselves in danger either.
Well, and I'm glad you clarified that, because I was just looking at the bear and I thought, what does this thing weigh that she's working on? So you really made that make a lot of sense because I don't know anything about this stuff.
And
so that's why we bring you in.
That's why the phone calls come in. And the first sentence is often, we have this idea, but we've never done it before. And I guess in the end, that's part of what prompted the book, because I now have done it before, where most community groups would have no reason to have repeat experience on such a thing.
Ruth, this has been fascinating. We didn't get to all the questions that I had on my list. So folks can come and see you at McNally Robinson, not only tonight, but tomorrow night.
I think, in fact, tomorrow I'm gone.
Oh, I thought it was 2 nights.
I think I messed that up.
No, that's okay. I know that
tonight? It's just tonight.
Yes,
it's just tonight.
Yes.
Ruth will be gone, so don't go tomorrow
off
night.
to Halifax
tonight, 7:30. Okay, well, beautiful place to visit as well. Thank you for this lovely work, and your book is absolutely gorgeous. Thank you for all of it.
My pleasure.
Ruth Abernethy, once again, you can see her tonight, 7:30 at McNally Robinson. The book launch, Life and Bronze, a Sculptor's Journal. After Global News at 2 o'clock, we are going to... Well, the story is called Tongue to Bum, a detox story. It's presented by Vita Health. That's all we'll tell you. You got to stick around to find out exactly what we're talking about after Global News.
It's 2:06 on this Wednesday afternoon. A decent day outside 680 CJOB. Keep it locked here for your weather forecast. I'm Greg. He's Brett. Want to thank Ruth Abernethy for joining us in that first half hour. Or last half hour, rather. She has left us with a gorgeous copy of her book. And we're just going through our legal department, our extensive legal processes here at 680 CJOB to find out what we need to do to give that book away. I'd like to take it home with me, but I think we should give it to a listener that would absolutely love to have this book. It makes an amazing gift. Beautiful coffee table book.